So, Mike, we are in the sunshine again, which is really nice.
Gorgeous.
So we've got the story this Sunday, the sort of double story. It's the healing of Jairus' daughter, and then in the middle is the healing of the woman with the issue of blood, or the woman with the hemorrhage, all in Mark 5. So what are your thoughts?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is this is a classic example in Mark's Gospel of interruption. And I guess that's my main theme, really. I'm reflecting upon interruption. Jesus is going to heal Jairus' daughter, and he is interrupted by this woman who touches the hem of his garment, having had a flow of blood for 12 years and seeking healing. And this is not the first, and it won't be the last time that Jesus is interrupted in his ministry. And there are often stories which kind of like interrupt other stories. So in Mark 6, for instance, when the disciples are sent out and they come back, between them being sent out and coming back, we have this story of Herod's beheading of John the Baptist. In Jesus' ministry more widely, he is being interrupted. When he's at dinner, for instance, in Simon the Pharisee's house, he is interrupted by this woman who bursts in and anoints him on the head. The children, they were bringing children for him to speak to them, and the disciples don't want them there, presumably because they don't want him interrupted. But he says, no, let them in. And there are lots of incidents of this. This is a book by Al Barrett, Being Interrupted, which features in it, it's a good book, about 5 of these interruptions in Mark's Gospel, but there are a lot more than 5.
Yeah.
There are loads, and if you look at any of the stories within Mark, like for instance the story early on of what's that story where he's interrupted, he goes to the synagogue, comes back, and he may be quite tired after the synagogue, and immediately Peter's mother-in-law needs healing.
Yeah.
So he's asked to go and do that. Then he might be quite tired by the end of the day, but no, they bring to him a load of people to be healed. Next morning, early in the morning, he goes off to pray. He's interrupted there. So it happens all the time. So what is this getting at? I mean, for one thing, one of the beautiful things about it is Jesus doesn't seem to mind being interrupted in this way, in the way that we might mind being interrupted and being, disrupted from what we're focusing on and our agenda. But that beautiful example where he tells his disciples, let's go away from here for a bit of peace and quiet. And when they get there, they find that this crowd has followed him. And what does he do? Is he annoyed with them for interrupting his plans? No, he has compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So there's something here about being with Jesus and participating in Jesus' way, which is that willingness to be interrupted. But more than this, what we find out in Mark's Gospel is actually the moments of interruption can be the moments of exercising the ministry. When he's interrupted by the woman with the flow of blood, that's an opportunity for exercising ministry in a new and fresh way. So not only should we be willing to be interrupted, but actually see these as genuine opportunities. And what's more, if you look at the woman who interrupts Jesus with the flow of blood, we're learning something from her about how perhaps we should be looking to interrupt others in different ways in order to elicit the movement of the Spirit. After all, you know, what's the flow of the story initially? The flow is Jesus is on his way to heal Jairus' daughter. The flow of blood, the flow of her money spent and not getting any return from it. She effectively, if you like, interrupts that flow by stopping Jesus in his tracks, and as a result, stopping the flow of blood and completely changing things around. So there's something here about the gift of interruption. And I think about dwelling in the Word, for instance, which is another way of interrupting our system as it's set up. because systems have certain rules that are hidden about who you speak with, about what, and who decides. Dwelling in the Word is a practice that disrupts that. It interrupts that.
But there's also a sense in which, or there's also a sense in which the woman interrupts herself, because she has been on this course of engaging with the doctors, seeking treatment, wanting to kind of sort this out, as it were, herself, and she interrupts that journey, that flow, by turning to Jesus, and seeking a different sort of power, a different sort of healing. And I just think of ourselves. We get very caught up in the things we have to do, and we keep at doing them the same way, and we don't step back and say, hold on, what happens if we let God into this? I think a couple of things have struck me about the story and the way that Mark frames this. You've got Jairus, who is, he's described as one of the leaders of the synagogue, clearly to indicate that there are some leaders, some people leading the synagogue, who are sympathetic to Jesus. They seek him out. So there is it doesn't paint a sort of solid picture of opposition, as it were. Secondly, he's therefore, if he's a leader in the synagogue, he's therefore of a kind of higher social class, as it were, and a complete contrast to the woman, who first of all is a woman, secondly, a woman with a flow of blood, therefore would be an outcast. So it's the outcast who interrupts the flow towards healing the rich man's daughter, as it were. And she actually slows Jesus's progress down so much that the girl dies, which of course enables then the resurrection.
And defiles Jesus by touching him.
Well, you see, so what is she to do? Because she wants Jesus to touch her, but that would be, that wouldn't work in terms of the social ordering there. So she touches him, and I'm struck. I noticed in something I was reading earlier, there is a similarity in the structure of this story about the woman with the flow of blood, and the woman who is described as a sinner in Luke's Gospel, early on, I think Luke 7, who comes to him while he's teaching in the Pharisee's house, and she comes from behind, she approaches him from behind, as the woman with the flow of blood does, and she touches Jesus. She touches him and anoints his feet with her tears and bathes his feet. And you've got similar sort of dynamics going on in both of those stories. And at the end, Jesus says to both of them, your faith has saved you or healed you. It's the same word. Go in peace. Says exactly the same words to both women. And there is the striking thing, of course, is that it's not that a person has come and said, I want to be forgiven, I want to be healed. They have reached out and touched. And Jesus has almost, not involuntarily, that's the wrong word, but without there being a kind of formal, I ask for forgiveness or please heal me, Jesus says, I will do this for you. The person has taken the initiative, and that has drawn that response. And I think, we get caught up. I've said this the previous conversation we've had. We get caught up on the word, both the word faith and the word saved. We make faith be quite a sort of burdensome statement about the facts of the content of belief, rather than a simple act of trust, which is what both of those women have shown, and indeed Jairus himself shows, a simple act of trust. And then when we use the word save, we've got into, or part of the church has got into this rather sort of narrow thinking that it's a once-off deal, rather than a continual process of being rescued out of all the things that aren't right about our human condition, whether that's physical healing or whether that's emotional or spiritual, or whether that's some sense of being kind of caught up more and more deeply into the life of God. But it's a process. It's not a sort of once done and that's it. And the woman, Jairus indeed, and the woman show that the importance that our role is to seek that healing, is to ask for that healing, whether we're interrupting or being interrupted.
Yeah, and the woman, models that she trusts that God is here in Jesus, that God is able in Jesus, and that God is willing in Jesus, and which leads her to transgress the laws, to interrupt in that way, but in a way that releases the healing, which Jesus doesn't intentionally heal her because he doesn't know who she is, and yet this is inevitable with that orientation and that connection. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you.